Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Kronk.
We are going to talk about wine and how wine is going to make an impact at your club. Hello, gig listeners, gig members, ladies and gentlemen. It is James Kronk, and we are doing another Golf Industry Guru podcast. And with me today, my goodness, is such a fascinating person. When you hear the story of all the different things that our guru has done in her career and everything else, because I think it's fascinating. And what I'm excited about, I don't know about you, I like some wine, a little bit, maybe a lot of it, not sure, white and red. But we're going to talk so much more than just wine. We're going to talk about service. We're going to talk about the wine experience. We're going to talk about people, engaging people. And so our guru today is Ashli Komaryk from Komaryk Communications. And she's our wine guru. She could probably be our guru on many topics, but today she's our wine guru among many things. And so, Ashli, welcome to the Gig Podcast.
Thank you so much, James. So great to be here with you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And already I can tell I love your voice. You have you done radio? You sound like you could be a voiceover artist, for goodness sake.
Oh, actually, I have done a bit of that. Yeah, it's great fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining our podcast today. And let's start off. The other day you sent me a little bit more about your bio, and there's so many things in there, for goodness sakes, where you. But let's just start off with tell me about you, your company, what you do, and then we'll get into a little bit more about some of that stuff. So let's start with that. Just tell me about yourself and about what it is that you do.
All right, James. Yeah, great. Well, I'm a trainer, I'm a coach, facilitator right now, and it seems like I've put together kind of pieces that have come from different areas of my career and experience in working in Europe and working here in Canada with different types of leaders and understanding the power of leadership and communication and team building and motivation. And after having some experiences that really let me know that, wow, there's a real need for that development in the market, I became a certified trainer. And so my mission is to help build respectful, trust-based teams. And I was working with a number of different organizations in different sectors. And from my 14-year history living in delicious Parma, Italy, where I did my wine studies, it just occurred to me, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to marry those two activities, that training, team building, communication, with the wine industry, my true love. So I launched a new division of my business called Beyond the Wine to help leaders in the wine industry, to help frontline ambassadors in wineries and also in hospitality companies and other places like golf clubs that have wine programs so that their team members feel confident in really, the teams are cohesive and working at their peak performance. And that means that spills over into the guest experience. And people can sometimes be intimidated by wine. They might not feel like they know enough about wine. And what a shame, because wine really can, increase the level of the quality of your life. And as wine ambassadors, as hospitality operators, we want to provide a welcoming experience for our guests. And being able to introduce them to wine and help them enjoy wine without feeling intimidated and help them discover the vast world of wine is really such a beautiful gift and can enhance the club members' experience too.
Yeah, and I think that what I loved, when we chatted earlier before the podcast about what it is that you do and about how it's done, is that really any club of any size, right? I mean, if any restaurant of any size can have a robust, shall I say, wine program that doesn't need to be complicated, doesn't need to be expensive. You don't need to have 400 bottles in the wine cellar. You just have to be committed, I think, or interested in committing to the wine experience for your members and guests. And that's obviously going to improve. Well, it's going to improve your bottom line. It's going to improve your member experience, but it's about getting your staff engaged. Would that be so? Beyond the wine, is that kind of what that term refers to? Tell me more about how you came up with that.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. It is exactly that. And because our experience of wine, both from the perspective of a host and from the perspective of a guest, really goes beyond what's in that glass. And I like to say, when you're selling a bottle of wine, you're selling much more than wine with that bottle of wine. It's the whole global experience. And so, yeah, that's what I teach. That's what I do in my training programs for the hospitality industry, for wineries, for golf clubs. We look at how we can work with what we've got. And like you said, you don't need 400 bottles in your cellar to have a stunning, memorable, wonderful wine experience for your guests. You know, it's really about deepening the experience to heighten the experience, I like to say. So working with what you've got, working with the people that you've got, making them feel confident, and the storytelling element, letting people know a little bit more about, if you've got 5 varieties on your wine list, great. Find out more about them. Where do they come from? Is it a village that's got a little bit of a story around it? Is it a family that has been making wine for 9 generations? Or, you know, a little something, because those are the things that your guests will remember. Your members will think, wow, that was such a great dinner. But then that story about that family, and then they, you know, the vicissitudes of the family's life and struggles. And that's what we had in our glass. It went far beyond just the wine in our glass.
Now, tell me, was it going to school in Italy that got you into kind of the passion about wine? Have you always been passionate about wine? But tell me about that experience. I mean, I think I read at some point that you have a degree that is fluent that you took in Italian.
That's right. Yes, I did. I went for an exchange year. It was supposed to be just the 1 year, and of course, as these things happen, I ended up staying for 14 years. And, and I did a degree in art history at the University of Parma, and that was all in Italian. And really that remains my Everest of achievements. And we can talk about that on another podcast. But, it was an amazing experience. And it was interesting to study art in Italy, and having a deepening of my experience of hospitality, of camaraderie, friendship, the culture of the table, which is just quintessentially Italian.
So true.
And the power of breaking bread together, both as a team and your staff doing that together, but also with your guests. It's such a powerful thing to do. And when I got a sense from, interacting with my friends and understanding the vastness of the Italian wine landscape, I really was intrigued, and I had to know more. So I started studying, and I was blown away by the depth of emotion that wine can give you, and the sensory experience, like when you're, and these are all learnable skills, like we learn, our sensory memory gets developed and expands as we experience different flavors and recognize them. And then we smell them, and then we taste them. And the next wine experience. And so allowing people to tap into that became a real passion for me. And I have to say, when you're in a beautiful place, and of course, golf courses are all really, really beautiful. So you have the perfect setting. You're already on the perfect stage to create a really mind-blowing sensory experience through your wine experience. So yeah, that's where it really started for me, is in Italy.
That's fascinating. And we will do another podcast, because that's a story in itself. What I loved you mentioning there was just about, the European experience. And I've been fortunate to do some traveling as well. And the way that they romance the dining experience is something unique in so many different cultures, and it's not to say that North America has a watered down version, but I can't, the number of times a server has come up to my table and said, "Are you ready to order?" is far too many times.
Yes.
And so that's not the kind of romance that I was hoping to get.
We can do better
before I give you my $200 for dinner. So let's talk about your club. So you're a golf club somewhere in the world, and at the moment you don't have, let's say, an organized wine experience. You got wine on the menu. Maybe you got a different glass for the red and the white if you're lucky. And you just hired Susie and Bill, and they start tomorrow. What are some of the pillars and kind of basic things that any club should have to be able to say, we have a wine program, we have a wine experience?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Yeah. And I think the first step I would start with is getting Susie and Bill familiar with what they're selling, with what they're offering, and making sure that your team is aware of the quality level, the provenance of those wines. And I think it would be a good idea to mix up the provenance too, to have, a Spanish offering, a North American offering, an Italian, Australia, just to have some variety. And then that gives you an opportunity to do, some interesting pairings with your culinary team, because you've got different profiles there. And so making sure that your team is aware of the characteristics, the pairing possibilities. And also on the note of pairings, I will also say I've got a series that I call Petulant Pairings. And yes, because we often get really hung up on the rules and regulations around wine that,
well, you have to have a Cabernet with steak, for goodness sakes.
Have to. Do you have to? I don't know. What if you like Chardonnay? Then that can be okay. And so that's my philosophy personally, is that you can be a bit petulant with your own pairing because it's your palate. And if it pleases your palate, then that means it's good. Yes. Good is such a subjective term, right? So, and also in making sure that Susie and Bill understand that they're not putting, no one likes to be should upon. So, you should order this with that, maybe a recommendation, or even better, I've had this with our steak and it's delicious. And right. And we've got to also be careful because my palate might be different from your palate. So if I'm telling you, I just love this sweet dessert wine with my steak, I don't know if I'd buy that endorsement, even if you felt really strongly, sincerely about that. So,
right.
Yeah.
Now I know you've got a sommelier accreditation, right? And you obviously know your stuff. You know your wine. Some of us know it. Some of us just drink it. And so one of the things that I find in working with some clubs or some food and beverage managers, things like that, some people really embrace wine. They know what they're talking about a bit. They know about different grapes. They know about different regions. They know what would be the difference between, a Sauvignon Blanc and a Chardonnay. But what do you let's just talk about the basic beginner level kind of stuff, because what we get more likely is we get the wine reps coming in and throwing all their products at us, and whoever gets us the best deal, that's what goes on the wine menu sometimes. What do you think are some of the basic things that Bill and Susie should know when it comes to the wine and like you just mentioned a minute ago? So what are some of the basics?
Well, I think some of the basics I would say is understanding some of the really most characteristic grapes and which are on your menu. So, knowing the most popular grape varieties. People are familiar with Chardonnay. Sauvignon Blanc is extremely popular, and it's different depending on where it grows. A French Sauvignon Blanc is going to be very different from a British Columbia one, which will be extremely different from a New Zealand one. and just understanding. There's a lot of very basic knowledge that we can give that people can take far. They can go far with some basics. And I think just having an understanding, and you want to let them taste, you want to let them experience the grape, not just tell them what the characteristics are, because that's not really easy to remember. If you're really well studied and good at memorizing facts and figures, great, but we're talking about the senses here. So let them experience that sensory memory and the sensory impacts of those grapes, and maybe even do a tasting with your culinary team and show them what the difference is. What happens physiologically in your mouth, sensory and physiologically, when you're putting together the steak with the Chardonnay versus with the Cab Sauvignon, and let them understand why it makes sense maybe to direct people, suggest if they just really don't know what to order, why that's a good suggestion. Because they're experiencing it, and they can endorse it from a first person point of view, not they say. When we get a suggestion from someone we trust, we're likely to take that suggestion. So we want to establish that trust by being credible.
Mm-hmm. I always say, when we were doing some training, and same thing. And when I was a server, I was a waiter for many years. I paid my way through school by making tips, and I didn't know anything about wine. But what I did know was that all I needed to know was what my one favorite red was and my one favorite white was. Because when someone said, tell me about your wine menu, I'd say, I can just tell you that this is the one wine that I really like. And it's normally pretty good, and it's the right price and it's the right kind of time, basic white. And then obviously if they want to take a recommendation that's going to make them feel better about the choice, or they'll go off on their own and pick one from their own decision. But, as opposed to saying, I don't know anything, or I don't know, I've never tried anything, or I don't drink wine, or whatever it might be. I mean, that's not the kind of experience the guest wants. They want the romance. When they walk in the door and they sit at the table, their expectations are so low. and they're so easy to exceed their expectations about what the experience could be all about. And like you said, ensuring that Susie and Bill have some basic understanding about what's on the program, right? And what's
absolutely. Yes.
What are some of the things that you, what are the, we talk about kind of glassware, or we talk about the amount to pour in a glass. I can tell you my pet peeve, by the way. I will not let a wine be poured in a wine glass without me smelling it first, because I've been to too many restaurants that use too much detergent in their dishwashers. And too often am I going to put a nice bottle of wine into a glass that has not been rinsed, or that it's not been aired, or it's been, it just came from the dishwasher and it smells like lemon, right? So that's my little pet peeve. Anyone that's ever been out with me.
That's a good one.
Yeah. But what are some of the tools that you think a club should have, once again, in order to kind of say that you're in the business, you're in the wine business?
Yeah. Well, and on the, pet peeves or service misunderstandings, for example, one is filling a glass really, really full. If you've ordered a bottle, I've seen that happen a lot, where a server will, just give you a nice big slug of that wine, and you don't need it. You want to play with it. You want to turn it around and swirl it and smell it and let the aromas escape. And you need the space in the glass to be able to do that. So that denotes someone who doesn't really understand the experience of wine. So in terms of tools, ideally a red and a white glass, great. If that's not in the budget, that's totally fine too. I've experienced sparkling wine from a glass with a larger bowl, not just a flute. And the experience is actually quite amazing, because you really get the aromas. And of course, the point of the flute for the sparkling is that the surface area is less than it is in a wider glass, which means the bubbles have less opportunity to escape as fast. That's the idea.
Okay.
So if you're going to be, you can serve a sparkling wine perfectly from a normal, wider bowled wine glass. It's fine. So red and white, yeah, if you can differentiate and have their own glasses, great. If your club doesn't have that in the budget at the moment, no problem. I think that with hospitality, we need not be apologetic for what is not there. I think we need to celebrate and realize what we're giving. And, when you give a gift to someone and they maybe kind of like it, but they're really grateful and they say thank you anyway.
Yes.
we don't want to say, oh, sorry, maybe this is not your favorite color sweater. It's the sweater that I chose for you because I think you will love it. And, anyway, that's on the philosophy of gift giving. But in terms of hospitality, be proud of your offering. Know you're offering well. Be proud of it. And if you're not proud of it, talk among your team. What's wrong here? What can we do better? What can we add here? How can we 1+ this so that we can heighten the experience, deepen it, and heighten it for our guests? And when you've got the team involved in that, in terms of tools, I think that teamwork is a really powerful tool in enhancing the offering of your hospitality. Because when people are, people support what they help create. If they're co-creating the guest experience, they're going to be very proud of it. It's theirs. It's what they are offering. Language is also really important as a tool. I notice immediately when a server tells me they have a special on. Well, who's they? Are you volunteering? Did you just walk in? So you stole that uniform from someone? Exactly. What's they? So it's us. And that's part of the beauty of the offering is that it's ours and you're part of us. And that's the, belonging part of being a member of a club or experiencing the club.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I mean, I think the challenge with clubs is what I've learned in the difference between a restaurant business and the club business. When you're in the restaurant business, just the restaurant business, I mean, your guests come and go. You might have a regular or two that sits at the bar. You might get to know a few groups that are coming and going. And if you do a great job, if you have a great party, if you have a great service, they're going to come back. And if you don't do a good job, they're not coming back. And your restaurant will go to business, like so many do.
Yes.
If you're a club that has members, well, they're coming back tomorrow, whether you like it or not. They're coming back tomorrow and next week and next month and next year. And if you don't get it right, if your soup is still cold, you're going to hear about it on a regular basis. And in the club business, actually, I mean, a lot of the phone calls that I will get is about, especially clubs with members or private clubs. And I shouldn't say just private clubs, but especially is the fact that food and beverage is considered this kind of this anchor sometimes, this it's like, we can't make money in food and beverage, or, it's just an amenity and we've got a mandatory charge every month. The members have to spend $100 in the restaurant. I always think to myself, well, that's a really good business strategy.
Yeah.
I mean,
torture.
I understand the history of it. I understand the reasons for it, but for goodness sakes, it's such an excuse. And so I guess my next question for you, really, what I want to talk about is, the customer, right? From a customer standpoint, what are they looking? We talk about the romance, but what are they looking for in a good wine menu, in a good wine experience, wine events? I mean, and just to clarify, as we know, there are some clubs that just knock it out of the park when it comes to taking ownership of their wine experience. But if you're a club that's thinking to yourself right now, you know what, we really don't do a lot when it comes to wine. What are some of the things that you think customers are looking for, members are looking for?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. And clubs can be at any stage in that journey of having an offering or not. I think that, in terms of the menu, I would ensure that there are some tried and true, really recognizable grapes that people can just feel confident and comfortable going to, things that they know. And I would make sure that there's something a little different. Because someone might say, yeah, I know the wines that I know, but I want to learn more. And I want to try something new, committing to a glass of something new, you can do that. And on that note, I think that, it's a tremendous opportunity to have, tasting events where you're thinking, and you can use the tasting events as educational programming and additional value add to your membership offering. You can also leverage those as socializing options for new additions to your wine list. You're teaching people about different wines and at the same time asking them, if this were on the menu, would you order it? Would you like to see this on the menu? And that helps you evolve your offerings and add to them and increment. And working with the reps, working with your wine reps. And, they, I'm sure, would be more than happy to do a tasting event, to have, a little bit of and not just, hopefully they are able to not just tell you about those wines, but also helping people with their basic wine tasting skills. What do you look for when you look? What are the names of these colors that we're seeing? What are we smelling?
Yeah, no, so true. So tell me, actually, to kind of my last little question here for you in our time is what are some things, I love what you're talking about service and about teamwork and about training. And I know that your programs, like you said, go beyond the wine. It's using that wine experience to another level. But what are some things that a club manager and a food and beverage manager, an owner can do? Kind of if they listen to this podcast and they walk out of their office and they walk into the room or to their staff or to wherever it might be. What are some things that you think are some basic standards that any manager could do to kind of get their team engaged in this kind of process?
We renew the menu and we get the training done, and then everyone is, okay, go, left to their own devices. Well, maybe they forgot a detail. Maybe they've got some questions. So frequent feedback, checking in, making your team feel like they're supported. If they've got questions or if they can't remember a thing, it's okay. We've got your back. We're here as a team, and reinforcing that knowledge so that they become more and more confident of it, which will spill over into your guests' experience, your members' experience. So really following up with that knowledge and continuous training.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's awesome. And it's so true. We often kind of we hear this all the time, especially in our industry, because in many parts of the world, it's still seasonal, right? So we get all launched up and trained up and excited when the doors open.
Yes.
Everyone's fantastic, and then 2 months later, we're all tired and cranky and burnt out. And if one more person asks me for a new bottle of wine, I'm going to hit them over the head with it. Right? So all that stuff can happen in our business, and like you said, it's about staying engaged on a regular basis and keeping people going. And, we've done things before, like little contests every once in a while. We'll come up with a contest. We'll have a new feature. Let's say we've got a feature wine this month. Who can sell the most glasses of wine this weekend, gets a free bottle or whatever it might be, gets a gift card or something like that. There's so many different ways to keep the staff engaged, which is a whole other podcast session and topic.
100%.
But I really like that, and so thank you so much, Ashli. And tell me, how can people reach out to you? What's the best way for them to learn more about Beyond the Wine and all of your training and services?
Well, they can visit my website at beyondthewine.ca, and they can reach me at Ashli, ASHLI, at beyondthewine.ca. Super happy to connect.
Awesome. Now, have you been back to Italy in the last little while? Obviously, no one's traveling right now, but when's the last time you were back there?
Well, mercifully, I went in 2019 in the fall. So I got my trip in just before, the lockdown in the following spring. And I was able to be there when my niece had a baby, the first of that new generation, and saw all my friends and family from when I lived there. And it was, just mind blowing. And I'm so grateful that I was able to get there. And I can't wait to get back. I can't wait to get back as soon as we're able to travel again.
I know it's, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, it's this is the longest time I've ever gone without being on a plane. So I actually miss airports. It's unbelievable. I actually miss them.
I have no tan. It's all,
That's true. That's true. Well, listen, Ashley, I appreciate you joining us very much on Golf Industry Guru. I think that there's so much information there that owners and operators and managers and F&B people can use. And I would say the one takeaway that I'm going to take from today's podcast is just not to be afraid of wine. Not to be afraid of learning about it, about whatever you know is enough when it comes to being passionate about the experience and helping the staff and the team realize that they don't need to be a sommelier in order to be excited about sharing the wine experience with your guests, with your customers, with your members.
Beautifully said. Whatever you know is enough. I love it. 100%.
Thanks so much for joining us, Ashley, and we'll have you again on the Golf Industry Guru podcast. Thank you to all our listeners, and you'll be able to see down below some other tools and templates and training from Ashley and from some of our gurus with regards to the wine experience. And we look forward to having you again. So as we like to say, see you on the inside. And Ashley, all the best.
Thank you so much, James. All the best to you as well.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.